All right, I want to ask you a little bit about an upcoming commitment, and then we'll get out of here. But Chauncey Keenan, a 5-star defensive back, commits in a couple of days and seems to be trending pretty heavily towards FSU. What's the biggest? Who's the biggest competition? Who's the biggest worry as we're just a couple of days out from his commitment?
Honestly, I'm not really worried. I think Florida State sits in an excellent position for Chauncey Kennon. I think, after his OV, I believe it was the June 13th weekend to Florida State, felt, super confident they were going to get that one done. Obviously, he's a 5-star prospect, so teams haven't stopped trying to, call him and waiver him. And I think, Miami, Florida would probably be the two, in-state programs. They're obviously, have some kind of impact with being closer to home. I think LSU is also a school that he liked throughout the spring. But I'm feeling pretty confident in my pick that he's going to end up picking Florida State. I think on Sunday is when he decides.
I don't know if there's any wood around you, but every FSU fan collectively would like you to knock on it before to just come right out and say, I'm not really worried. Made everybody sweat maybe a little bit more. Obviously the answer is pretty easy here, but how big of a win is this for Mike Norvell if he's able to get it done? And then, Pastor Tan, how close to elite would, it's maybe two-parter, but how big of a win is it? And then, Pastor Tan, I mean, is he the best recruiter on the staff, and that's kind of undeniable at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big win. They if they're able to get that, land Chauncey Kennon, he'd be obviously the top ranked prospect in their class. He'd be the second 5-star player if he finishes as a 5-star. He's ranked as one right now, to join Mike Norvell's program at Florida State during his, now going on 6-year tenure. Right, Hakeem Williams is the other one. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a pretty historic win for Norvell. And yeah, I mean, Pat Surtain has done a really good job of recruiting that position during his time at Florida State. That was a good, forward thinking hire, I think, a couple of years ago when they added him to the staff. Thing that goes, I think, a little bit overlooked with him is just how well he's developed those players, right? Renardo Green and Jarian Jones in that year under him in 23, turned into, I mean, just excellent players, right? And now they're both killing it in the league. I don't even know that Pat's I wouldn't describe him as a grinder on the recruiting trail. He's not a guy that's calling these kids every day. But I think just his presence, that's not to say he doesn't communicate with his top targets. He still does. But his presence, the guys he's coached, his son, obviously, that's, we hear recruits bring that up all the time, that, he's got, his son's the best DB in the league. And, arguably the best DB in the league. And he, I think that has an impact. So yeah, I mean, he's one of their better recruiters. And, I think, obviously landing Chauncey Kennon would go a long way towards vaulting up to maybe be, their top recruiter on staff.
Is it truly Pastor Tan? I certainly don't want to take anything away from him with this, because obviously he plays a large part in, based on what you just said with the recruits and stuff. But with that, do you think it's easier to recruit DBs at Florida State? Is that just kind of a place that you're always kind of going to get talent? Again, I want to be very respectful the way I'm asking that. I am not trying to take away anything from Pat, but is recruiting DBs at Florida State maybe a little easier than recruiting, I don't know, offensive line, just tight end, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at where DBs across the country, populate, right? Compared to offensive linemen, you're not finding many, NFL level offensive linemen that come from the state of Florida. It's just not, there are a lot of Midwest guys, right? That's the heart of O-line country. But DBs, right? We're talking about the Southeast, the state of Florida, South Florida specifically, churns out some of the top DBs every cycle. So I do think it's easier to recruit that position, but that's not, to take away from,
right,
landing a guy like Chauncey Kennon, who Miami, Florida, LSU, Georgia, all took on, brought in for OVs and wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I didn't want to be disrespectful to Pat by saying that, because Florida's right here too, and Miami's right here too, and LSU's 5 hours away, right? It's not like it's, you're the only school in the Southeast that has that advantage. Any prediction on, what do you think the ceiling for this class is, and then what do you think the floor is? Again, outside of a 4-8 disaster on the field.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is. I mean, we looked at the class calculator, and I think the ceiling is 10. Honestly, and I know that might sound crazy considering they have a top 10 class right now, and it could get even higher if they land Chauncey Kennon. But the options aside from him and just like I just don't envision it. We haven't seen they won 13 games a couple of years ago, and I think they finished with the number 12 class, and that was the highest class of Norvell's tenure at Florida State. So we don't expect them to win nearly as many games this fall. So I think the ceiling is probably 10, and then I think 15, like the 10 to 15 range is kind of what I'm looking at. And obviously Florida State should be recruiting better than that, but considering the circumstances of 2-10, and the fact that you're probably not going to have an amazing season this fall, I think it's a fair range, and I think it's something that they can work on, trying to improve, with this new look of the staff, if they have a solid season this year in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. Fans are going to complain unless it's like top 3, and then if it's not 1 at that point, they would probably complain about that too. But I bet they'd find a way to complain at 1. But let's test it and find out if I'm right. But I have a feeling that there'd be some kind of complaint, even if well, why couldn't you do this before or something like that. But I do think, all things considered, it feels a lot like, silver linings, but when you lost to Notre Dame by 3 in 2018, right? Or I'm sorry, 2021, you kind of felt good coming out of that game because you were a 3-touchdown dog and didn't expect it. It would kind of feel the same way here. Like if you were able to finish top 10, I think that'd be a pretty big win for FSU. And then, 11-12, I don't think you're throwing anybody off a cliff for that. But I kind of agree with your 10 to 15 range. I feel like anything outside of that would be kind of a disappointment, but wouldn't be the worst. So, Zach, you mentioned an article that you'll drop soon on some background recruiting info, and then just for updates and news and info on recruiting and all things FSU, where can people follow you and find your work?
Yeah, noles247.com. We've been trying to diversify our content even more, doing more side podcasts with our buddy Trey Rowland. He brought the Rollcast back. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and definitely stay tuned with a lot more recruiting coverage on the way this month.
Yeah, the Rollcast is one of my favorite things to play in the car with my kids. They enjoy it.
You're growing up fast.
Yeah, Zach, happy 4th of July, man. Thanks for hanging out.
You too. Thanks, dude.